Hello, everyone. We're just going to wait a minute to let people filter in. If you have a YouTube account and you're logged in, then you can use the chat, but we found that um, can't. Um, other people can't use the chat. So if you need to at all, then we're just going to put Dimitra's email in the chat, and you can go there and email any questions or anything throughout, and we'll make sure that we either look at them at the end or get back to you. And if you can use the chat, it'd be really nice if you put where you're coming from today. It's always nice to see who's around. And welcome. Thanks for joining us. Right, hello. I'm going to start us off. People might filter in, but I think we've got some people ready and waiting, so that's great. Thank you so much. So today we're going to be talking about using interim data as a workflow that might be a little bit different to what's traditional in market research, but can be really helpful to save a bit of time and to sort of make it easier to predict customer timelines and use the data that's on hand. So we're really lucky to be hearing from Samantha Dimmitt from Q&A Research. She can't join us live today, but we've recorded a chat with her before, and it's really, really interesting to see how she's using this like nugget to look at her own workflow. So I'll let Samantha introduce herself and the concept later. And we're also joined by Adam Baker, who's from the team here at Indico. And I am Lucy, I'm the product marketer here at Indico. If you're not familiar with Indico, then we're a small team who are doing data visualization and report automation, both online with our product SlideGen and with manual services as well. So that is where our webinar today is going to focus. We have a little intro that's happening at the moment. Then I'm going to move on to let Adam talk more about the concept of using interim data, how that works, the realities of it, some things to look for, and how to implement it. And then we're going to hear from Samantha, who's in conversation with Adam. It's a really nice little talk about Samantha's approach at Q&A Research, what they're doing there. And that should take us up to half past the hour. So you're more than welcome then to stay with us for the Q&A or to drop off at that point. It's all going to be recorded. And if you have any comments, questions, anything, put them in the chat if you're able to, or email Dimitra, and we'll be monitoring both of those things and responding at the end. So yeah, thank you very much, and I hope this will be really useful for you. I'm going to pass over to Adam now.
I would have probably spoken with many of you in the past, but for those of you who don't know me, I'm Adam, Chief Strategy Officer here at Indico Labs. I have over a decade of experience as a market researcher, and I'm all too familiar with the pain of manually creating PowerPoint reports by hand. In fact, if you've been keeping up with our LinkedIn posts, some of you will have seen this quote pop up. This is me. I literally lived and dreamt a monthly tracker that was on a constant loop and was essentially in my conscious and subconscious. Anyway, we're not here today to talk about trackers. That's coming up later in the year. In this section of the webinar, we're going to discuss the process of setting reports up on interim data and refreshing them with final data once it's ready. We'll provide a demo of how SlideGen makes this process a viable solution, and we'll take a look at the benefits. So let's dive in. I'm sure this is going to sound familiar to you, but I've had times in my research career where I'm juggling multiple projects all at different stages in the research cycle. I'm a planner, so I would have had timelines for each, planning exactly when the fieldwork will finish, when I will receive the tables, and how long I've got to produce the customer report. The problem is, there are two highly unpredictable elements to the majority of market research projects: your client and your fieldwork provider. Anyone here who has either had research customers or is a research buyer themselves, which I'm certain is everyone, will know that there are more often than not going to be delays getting sign off from the customer. And then once you're in field, you're hanging around for those last 15 completes in Luxembourg or somewhere before you can produce your final tables and therefore your report. And then, of course, the inevitable happens. You've got three big projects all coming to a head at the same time. One of them is already late, another deadline is being squeezed by the customer, and you're lucky enough that one of the three is pretty chilled out. But still, you need to either work early mornings and late nights, or you need to pull in resources from other departments. Well, what if I told you that there was a better way? By integrating with SlideGen, you can introduce a workflow that allows you to keep control of your timelines and even deliver ahead of schedule to some of your customers. To keep things simple, I've broken this down into 3 stages for you. Stage 1, interim data and report design. Before your project kicks off in field, request interim data from your DP provider or department. At this point, you can decide what you feel comfortable with, but more often than not, you're probably going to get a good read on how the data is going to fall out at about 50 to 75% of your sample being filled. Using this data, you can begin to design your final report while your other projects are collecting data or you're waiting on sign-off from client number 2. Stage 2, map with SlideGen. So upload your new report and your interim data to SlideGen, and then using the point and click interface, simply map data from your Excel to your PowerPoint. You can even map sample sizes, data to call out boxes, as well as obviously charts and tables. On top of this, you can perform transformations to do things like sort the data and trim to keep only the top 5 response options. Stage 3, receive your final data. When you receive your final data tables from your DP provider, simply create a duplicate of your project in SlideGen and use the switch data function to refresh the entire report. Everything will be updated: the base sizes, the callouts, the charts, the tables, and best of all, those transformations that you set up are all going to be reapplied to the data, so that even though the data is different, if you ask the platform to show you only the top 5, that's what you're going to get with the new data. It's the same with things like conditional formatting and SIG testing. Now, I imagine that some of you are still going to have reservations, because how are you going to be sure that you're reporting on the right thing? Or maybe the data will have changed so that you want to add a new slide here and there, or even delete a section. Well, let me ask you this. Is it better at that stage to be starting from scratch with a limited time of resources so you end up with a rushed report? Or would you rather have a report that is, say, 80% finalized and requires a little bit of refreshing here and there? Granted, there will be some projects where this might not work for you. But for the ones where you kind of already have an idea of what the client requires in the report, there is no reason why you can't get a head start. And believe me, the benefits will touch more than just you, but let's see the process in action before we talk about that. Jumping into SlideGen, I've already imported my PowerPoint template and I've imported my interim and I've done all the mapping. I didn't want this to be a video where I show you exactly how we map everything, but I will show you a few things before we get on to the important part. So in here, I have a demographics section and I've mapped some data to text boxes and I've mapped data to charts and tables. I've also mapped the base size down here. So the sample size at the moment with my interim data is 975 respondents. We have a brand essentials section, which is essentially our awareness and our purchase behavior and consideration. So we have this kind of funnel style where these are just individual text boxes. And then we have charts for unaided awareness by total and segmentation, aided awareness, purchases, and consideration. Now, I just want to show you something in here. What we have done is we've sorted the data from high to low using our transformations. So we've sorted the data and then we've anchored wild roots to the top. And then we've used our filter by text search to remove the none of these answer option. So that's something that we've already done to the data here. And the important part is that when we switch data, this order might not be the same because these percentages might change. But these transformations are going to be repeated in the order that we've set them here. So again, for this slide, for this chart, the sort by is going to be applied, the anchor labels is going to be applied, and then the filter by text search is going to be applied. And that's the same for the different sections in here too. For example, the brand metrics where we've done some SIG testing against wild roots. And then we have these statements with a bunch of transformations applied here to filter text, switch to rows and columns, and so on. And then we have an appendix section as well, which is just a bunch of tables, really. There we go. Now, this doesn't look like a perfect report within the platform, but when we download to PowerPoint, it's going to look exactly as it did when we designed it in PowerPoint, which we will do at the end. But before we do that, I want to come on to the important part. We're going to upload our final data. We finished in field. Our data processing team have had the time to produce the new set of tables. So we have all of our respondents. We just need to update this report. I'm going to show you how quick and easy that is now that we have already mapped everything within the platform, within SlideGen. Move over to the data sources and upload our new data file. So I'm going to select Final Data and upload that file. So now that we've uploaded the data file, we want to essentially swap them around. So at the moment, it's using our original data source, which is interim data. We want to swap that with our final data. Before we do that, I just want to highlight a couple of numbers in here again. So we have 34% here, 25, 41. Those are nice and big, so you can keep an eye on those, see what happens when we switch the data. The other thing is we have this 975 respondents. I know that that changes to something above 2000, so keep an eye on that and you'll see that happen as well. To switch the data behind the project, there is a switch data button here, and you get a warning to tell you that you are going to be overriding the data. And you just pick your final data source, check compatibility. At this stage, if it finds any differences between the files that it's not expecting, then it might warn you that some of your, let's say you've removed a table, it will warn you that that table is no longer there and give you the opportunity to remap the data for that specific chart. I know that these files are the same, so we don't have any compatibility issues. So we just need to hit perform and OK. There we go. So this number, I think, was 34% before, has now jumped up to 38. We've got 27, 35, and our base size is 2,334 respondents. All of these other numbers have been updated as well, and the same for every single slide. Everywhere that we've mapped information has been updated, including the transformations. So wild roots is still pinned to the top, but the sort order might be different in here. And from here, we can download to PowerPoint and get to work on those little updates that we might need to apply. But you can see in under a minute, you can go from receiving your data to having 80% or more of your report complete and ready for your important narrative. If you've got some extra time, spend it on crafting a compelling story rather than fiddling around with the data. Hopefully you're already on board and excited to try out this new process for yourself. However, if you're still on the dubious side, wait until we look at some of the benefits that you may not have already considered. So aside from the obvious of you taking back more control over your time, working on a report at your own pace rather than being dictated by the fieldwork timings, there are other areas that this workflow touches, and some of these may even help you get internal buy-in for the process change. First up, your DP provider or team. They might be hesitant at first. You're essentially asking them to do their part of the job twice. But hear me out. How often are you receiving your final tables only to see that you need to add a new cut or you want the data to be changed in some way? And then what? You're making your request, you're going to the back of the queue, and you're probably waiting impatiently for your rerun of your tables while your deadline is zooming towards you. By taking an interim cut of the data, you get an early chance to spot anything that's missing from your spec and request the changes that can be incorporated into your final run with little to no stress. So not only are you taking the pressure off yourself, but your data processing colleagues are going to be having a better time too. Number two, your quality checking team. You're using a software to map and perform data transformations. What this means is that if you've got everything right with your interim data, it's also going to be correct when you switch your data. So with your interim reports, you can export it to PowerPoint and hand it off to your quality checking team or colleagues, and they don't need to rush either, because you're probably still going to be waiting for Luxembourg 3 days from now. So they've got plenty of time to perform the quality checks and sign everything off before you even start working on your final report. Last but not least, you're going to end up with happier customers. Those tight deadlines are no longer an issue. You're probably even able to deliver your report ahead of schedule, or at least very soon after your fieldwork completes. And you will have more time to focus on the important narratives rather than rushing to get all of your data transferred into chart format. Happy you, happier colleagues, happy customers. What's not to love?
Sorry, I was on mute there. Great, and that was Adam showing us the sort of process and the order that things go in and some of the teams that might be involved. And these are things that he managed to speak to Samantha about as well. So a little background, Q&A Research is a team led principally by 5 people at the moment. The company's been running for just over 30 years, and they do full service market research. Samantha is, as you'll meet, really lovely, so passionate and so knowledgeable. So it was really, really fun to see her working with us and see how she's been taking some of these ideas and applying them to her own company. So I will load up that interview and let you listen away.
Okay, so we'll start with something easy. If you could tell us a little bit about Q&A research and your role in the company.
Sure. So Q&A Research has been in business for more than 30 years now. So we've weathered many ups and downs industry-wide, and we have clients across many industries serving both quantitative and qualitative research services. So we work with financial services primarily, but also have worked with food and beverage. We have a big presence there. And we've worked with retail services, companies of all shapes and sizes. Over the course of 30 years, Q&A Research has worked with a lot. I have been with Q&A Research for 6 years. I'm going on actually 7 years now. And I started at the bottom as a project assistant and have worked my way into being the senior analyst on Q&A's team. So I have worn many hats over my time at Q&A, and now I am in charge of all of the reporting that we do here.
So this is a new workflow for you that you're implementing. How do you expect it to impact you and your team?
I'm really personally very excited about this workflow. I think that it's going to be a great change for our company. And to describe our current system right now, what we do is we have a general idea of how we want to analyze our reports. There can be some setup occasionally when the reports are not quick turnaround. But as I mentioned, we work with businesses of all shapes and sizes. And a lot of those businesses do require quick turnaround projects. So that time in field is really valuable. And it's something that we haven't been capitalizing on. And this is where the new software and the new process will come in. We're hoping to maximize that time in field and use it to get our clients and ourselves really pushing forward with that reporting effort so that they can get their deliverable as quickly as they want it, which is pretty much right after the field closes. Our current process works at about 14 days from field close until the client can get their report. We have been able to turn it around faster, but it's always a big struggle internally to get everything closed and turned around, and everyone feels a little bit frantic. With the new process, I'm really optimistic that we'll be able to take that reporting time down. I quoted my colleague, we're hoping to go from 14 to 4 days in terms of our reporting turnaround. And I'm really hopeful that using that time while the survey is in field, we'll be able to just free up a lot of time on the back end and get us to really think about the analytical story that the client wants to hear at the end. We can tell them all of the details and be a little bit more thoughtful in the report that we give to them, not just cramming to get all of the data in and the report back to the client's hands.
Change is usually a little bit difficult to push through. How did you get the rest of your team on board?
Yeah, so at Q&A, we're a small executive team, but I did talk to each of our stakeholders before discussing this because it actually does impact everyone at the company. So I spoke to our data team and made sure that everyone was really on board with the changes and the changes that it would mean for them. It means that our project managers need to be discussing reporting with the clients earlier. It means that our data team needs to be ready to prepare a midfield data run. And it means that everyone needs to be a little bit more thoughtful up front. However, I was actually met with little opposition, and everyone was very excited to hear that we could be more intentional in all of our processes and really shrink that turnaround time with a lot less stress to everyone involved.
Lastly, I'd love to hear a little bit about what you enjoy about working with Indico Labs.
Well, I have worked with Adam for a few years, and everyone at Indico has been extremely responsive. And one of the most important things that I was looking for in a software provider and also in a partner in our reporting process is that personable and responsive attitude that I get from everyone at Indico. Everyone has been extremely helpful. And I know that whenever I run into a problem, I have an immediate solution. I was actually just telling a colleague this yesterday on a phone call that I trust Indico immediately and implicitly to take care of anything that may come up. Any issue that I run into, I know I have a partner on the other side who will help me work through it. And if there's something that isn't possible, I know that they will move heaven and earth to try and make it happen or bring it to their team so that they can also work on it as well. So I have every confidence that our partnership is really strong moving forward. And I'm looking forward to the changes to our workflow internally at Q&A and also what the partnership can do for both of our companies.
Okay, so we'll start with something easy. If you could tell us a little bit about.
There we go. Sorry, I'm just going to run that again. So yeah, it was really lovely to hear from Samantha there. And I've just loaded Adam back up onto the screen so that we can talk. We're running slightly under time actually, which is quite nice. And we'll move on to the Q&A in just a second. But thank you everyone for joining. If you have any questions or want to be in touch at all or anything here was interesting and you want more details, there's a QR link to us at Indigo Labs in the top there. Also, Dimitra's email that was in the chat earlier, you're more than welcome to email her at any point with questions and things like that. So we got some questions that were emailed through to Demetra, which is handy. So thank you for that. And I'll just move on to that unless there's anything else that you'd like to say, Adam.
No, just thank you as well, Lucy. It's been really good.
Cool. Yeah. It's our first one, so it's nice to nice to bring it together and see it go live. So, Adam, are you ready for some questions?
Yeah.
Nice. One question was, is this good for any particular type of research, or does it lend itself to certain methods or types of research at all?
Yeah, I suppose it makes sense to use this methodology when you have a feel for what the customer is actually looking for, which hopefully you would do if you've got a very strong brief and you've done some work before you've even gone into field to understand what they're looking to find out and what they're looking to report. I know that quite often from talking to customers that often your end client is actually pretty prescriptive in terms of what they actually want to see in the report, and quite often they will be quite controlling over how that needs to look and what you might need to report on. So in those cases, this actually works in your favor because you can even get the report signed off by your customer before you even begin putting it into SlideGen and mapping your data, saving even more time at that point as well.
Amazing. There's another question, which is, do you have any sort of indicators or like ways to quantify? I think this is asking the kind of benefits, so things to maybe watch out for that might be indicators that it's working for your team.
Yeah, definitely. I think that piece where we talked about the different benefits and the different touch points is a really key area. This isn't, I mean, although it's mainly affecting the researchers in terms of when they actually do their reporting, this does, as you saw, touch a number of different areas of your company or your team. So I think making sure that you've involved your data processing team and your QC team early on in the decision-making process as to whether or not you're going to go ahead with implementing this process is pretty key. And you'll see quite quickly if you just talk to those teams as you're progressing that it's not just benefiting yourself, but it's also benefiting them. I think one of the big pieces, I mean, in my old company, we actually implemented receiving interim data, not reporting on it, but receiving interim data while the project was in field, to be able to essentially assess that, look at the interim data and make any decisions on, do I need to ask for some extra cuts? Do I need to do X, Y, and Z? And even that alone, without doing any reporting on it, was a huge change for us as a business. Especially, we were a quick turnaround research team, so it was important that we were able to deliver results faster. But what it meant that actually we were relieving some of that stress on the data processing team because we were able to get our changes in early. We weren't harassing them, asking them to prioritize our work over someone else's. It just made the whole process a lot smoother. And then I think you can't really underestimate what Samantha was saying a moment ago in her video, that that the reduction in time to get the report to the customer, that I think she said 14 days to 4 days. Their current reporting time is 14 days. They're hoping to get it down to 4 days. They're not necessarily talking about the amount of time it actually takes them to produce the report. They're talking about the amount of time it takes to get the report to the customer. And I think that's a really good indication that something like this is working, because as we all know, market research customers want their results as soon as possible.
Yeah, it's always, why is it not done now? That's perfect. I'm going to leave it there and say thank you very much. Thank you very much to everyone who's joined us. Huge thanks to Samantha for talking to us about this. It's really interesting. And thank you for Adam for showing us the methodology and speaking through. Yeah, I hope you all have a lovely day, and we will be emailing out this recording as well. So yeah, don't panic if you got distracted or missed a bit or something.
And I guess the last thing to say, Lucy, is that we're planning on doing a few more of these throughout the summer. Is that right? On some different use cases as well.
Yeah, we
So
are.
keep an
We've
eye out
got
for those.
a nice schedule planned. Hoping to do some different conversations, get some different topics up, and yeah, if you'd like to speak in any of them, come talk to us. But yeah, we'll send out more information about those. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.